For today's enrichment, we are going to be looking at adding integers. While doing that, we are going to be modeling using number lines, and we're also going to be using these blocks to represent zero pairs. So a zero pair is a pair of numbers whose sum is 0. So we're going to have our greens represent positive values, our reds represent negatives. When you combine a pair, one positive and one negative, they cancel each other out to 0. So let's look at this first example, 3 plus 5. So I'm going to start at the number 3. And if we think about on the number line, when we're adding a positive, we go to the right. So if we're adding 5, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which leaves us at 8. With zero pairs, we would say, okay, or with using these blocks, we have 3 positives. We are adding 5 more positives, which gives us a total of 8 positives. Now let's get into the tricky stuff. We know how to add positives. Let's throw in some negatives. So first, a positive plus a negative. And I'm just going to highlight this a little bit to help. So this first one was positive and a positive. Now we're doing positive and a negative. So again, we're starting at 8, so I'm just going to mark that on the number line. When we added a positive, it went to the right. When we're adding a negative, negatives are opposite, so we're going to go to the left. So adding positive goes to the right, adding negative goes to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which lands us at positive 2. If we think about it using these blocks, we started with 8. We added 6 negatives. So we brought in 6 negatives, which, remember, if we get a pair, they cancel out. So this is 0. I can get rid of it. This cancels each other out. 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 And we're left with 2 greens, which represents 2 positives. Number 3, 2 plus negative 5. So again, starting at 2, when we add positives, we go to the right. Since we're adding negatives, we're going to the left 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That landed me at negative 3. If we think about it using these blocks, we started with 2 positives. We brought in 5 negatives. And then we look at what can cancel out. These cancel each other out. These cancel each other out. We are left with 3 reds, which represents 3 negatives. And one more of this type. Starting at number 3, again, when we add positives, we go to the right. Since we're adding negatives, we're going to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That lands us at negative 4. If we use the blocks, we started with 3 positives. We brought in 7 negatives. So we'll see what cancels out. These 2 cancel each other out. These 2 cancel each other out. These 2 cancel each other out. We're left with 1, 2, 3, 4 reds, 4 negatives. So that was positive plus a negative. Let's look at a negative plus a negative. So starting this one at negative 5. We're adding a negative. Again, when we add a positive, it goes to the right. When we add negative, it goes to the left. So adding negative 1, we're going further into the negatives, which leaves us at negative 6. If we think about it with these blocks, we started with 5 negatives. we added another negative, which gives us a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 negatives. One more like this, starting at -3. We're adding 2 negatives. When we add positives, it goes to the right. When we add negatives, it goes to the left, further into the negatives. So 1, 2, that lands us at -5. So we started with 3 negatives. We're adding 2 more negatives, which gives us a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives. So you'll notice it's kind of like, okay, 5 plus 1 is 6, but they're negatives. 3 plus 2 is 5, but they're negatives. And the last thing we're going to look at is a negative plus a positive. So we're starting with -1. We're adding positives. When we add positives, we go to the right. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It lands us at +3. If we think about it with the blocks, we started with 1 negative. We added in 4 positives. These two cancel each other out. We're left with 1, 2, 3 positive values. Number 8, we're doing -7 plus 2. So I'm starting at -7. When we add a positive, we go to the right. So I'm moving 1, 2 to the right, which puts me at -5. If we think about it with our blocks, we started with 7 negatives. We added in 2 positives. These will cancel out. These will cancel out. We're left with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives. And the last one, we're starting at -6. We're adding +3. Positives go to the right. So 1, 2, 3 lands us at -3. If we think about it with blocks, we started with 6 negatives. We added in 3 positives. These cancel out, these cancel out, these cancel out. We're left with 1, 2, 3 negative values. So now let's look at some comparisons here. For the positives, we know how to do that. 3 plus 5 is 8. When we had a positive and a negative, they were opposites. If we look at our original numbers, 8 and 6, if we're ignoring negatives, we get 2 by subtracting 8 minus 6. If we ignore the negatives here, 5 and 2, if we find the difference, 5 minus 2, that's 3. But in this case, there were more negatives, so it was negative. For here, 7 and 3, the difference is 4. There are more negatives. There's 7 negatives, so the result is negative. As I was saying before, for the negative plus a negative, they're the same. We just add. 5 and 1 is 6, but they're negatives being added, so it's negative. 3 and 2 is 5, but it's negatives being added, so it's negative. And then this negative plus a positive is the same thing as positive plus a negative, just in a different order. So again, since they're opposites, we're finding the difference. 4 minus 1 is 3. The bigger number is positive, so it's positive. 7 minus 2 is 5. The bigger number is negative, so it's negative. 6 minus 3 is 3. The bigger number is negative, so it's negative.